In Judah, God is known. His name is great. In Israel, in Salem also is his tabernacle and his dwelling place in Zion. There break he the arrows of the bow, the shield and the sword in the battle. In Salem also is his tabernacle and his dwelling place in Zion. Thou art more glorious and excellent than the mountains of praise. The stout-hearted are spoiled.
Okay, a lot of technical problems today. I had to do a double restart, and then then my camera had me looking like a red, whatever, just red. All right, so here we are. Let's continue on our study in Proverbs 3. Let's not waste any more time. My son, forget not, whatever. My son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments. For length of days and long life and peace shall they add to thee. Let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck. Write them upon the table of thine heart. So shalt thou find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not on thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him. I'm having some sound issues today. There we go again. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own conceits. Fear the Lord, and depart from evil. Where? Be not wise in thine own eyes. Did I say conceits, really? Yeah, be not wise in thine own eyes. Maybe I was thinking it. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. It shall be health to thy navel, and marrow to thy bones. Honor the Lord with thy substance, and with the fruit of all thine increase. I'm just doing audio engineering at the same time. So shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy presses shall burst out with new wine. My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction. For whom the Lord loveth, he correcteth, even as a father the son whom he delighteth. In whom he delighteth. Of course, you wouldn't say in who he delighteth, whatever. In whom. Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. For the merchandise of it is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all things thou canst desire are not to be compared to her. Length of days is in her right hand, and in her left hand riches and honor. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to them that lay hold upon her, and happy is everyone that retaineth her. The Lord by wisdom hath founded the earth, by understanding hath he established the heavens. By his knowledge the depths are broken up, and the clouds drop down the dew. My son, let not them depart from thine eyes. Keep sound wisdom and discretion. So shall they be life unto thy soul, and grace unto thy neck. Then shalt thou walk in thy ways safely, and thy foot shall not stumble. When thou liest down, thou shalt not be afraid. Yea, thou shalt lie down, and thy sleep shall be sweet. Be not afraid of sudden fear, neither of the desolation of the wicked when it cometh. For the Lord shall be thy confidence, and shall keep thy foot from being taken. Withhold not good from them to whom it is due, when it is in the power of thine hand to do it. Say not to thy neighbor, go and come again, and tomorrow I will give, when thou hast it by thee. Hello? I don't know. Is that my headphones? I don't know. I keep getting occasional distortion. And I keep thinking it's the microphone, or actually, I don't think it's actually the microphone, but I had to restart my audio device, which is pretty new, actually, less than 6 months, actually. Which would be disappointing, but it's under warranty, I guess. I always hate having to deal with warranty. Sorry. Oh, such profanity in the midst of such holiness. Let's go back. Say not to thy neighbor, okay, thou hast it by thee. Okay, we got there. Well, that's pretty profane also, you know? Don't be like that. Devise not evil against thy neighbor, seeing he dwelleth securely by thee. Strive not with a man without cause, if he hath done thee no harm. If he have done thee no harm, envy not the oppressor, and choose none of his ways. I really need reading glasses. Thanks a lot. Go away, notifications. Choose none of his ways. All right. For the froward is abomination to the Lord, but his secret is with the righteous. The curse of the Lord is in the house of the wicked, but he blesseth the habitation of the just. Surely he scorneth the scorners, but he giveth grace to the lowly. The wise shall inherit glory, but shame shall be the promotion of fools. Well, as I begin to read this, as you go into Proverbs, at first you can move quite swiftly, but then it gets just deep. The depth just gets harder. Because really, you think about just these first 2 verses. You could spend more than an hour talking about the relevant subjects pertaining to this idea. Despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction. For whom the Lord loveth, he correcteth, even as a father the son in whom he delighteth. And what that means is, you often chastening doesn't always mean like, well, let's look it up. Before I start making claims about it and start getting myself out on a branch, right? I don't claim to be an expert on everything. I have an instinct, and also I have studied for a while, but it's, like I said. All right, it's not my job to do this. You know what I mean? It's like if I had every day to do nothing but this, I don't know, maybe the world would be different. I mean, my world would be different, that's for sure. As far as the world I could provide here also would be different. But here we are. And chastening is this word musar in Hebrew, and it means discipline, chastening, correction. Okay, that's pretty generic. What does it say down in the... I just want to get down to the root, just in case there's anything. It's like properly chastisement, figurative. It's from yakah. Reproof, warning, instruction. So it doesn't say anything about, it doesn't indicate, slapping, hitting, spanking, smacking, smashing. I mean, oftentimes we think of chastisement. Here's the thing. Well, I'll get to that in a moment. Hold on. To discipline, chasten, admonish. But yes, sorry, that's the base word. I was just wondering where it comes from. It comes from a root that means to chastise literally with blows or figuratively with words. So notice it isn't until you get to the primitive root level that you notice that it does have to do with that, a blow, so to speak. Now, there's ways you can deliver, there's different kinds of striking. Okay. One of the things I've sort of made a lot of lately, I mean, no, it's no secret. I mean, I'm not making it the only one, but it's like, there's all this talk about words being violence. I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, the word of God is the most violent, powerful force in the world that can divide and sunder the soul and the spirit. Are you kidding me? It can take your life. By the word of the Lord, the earth and the heavens were brought together and made. I mean, so yeah, words can be powerful. And so there's such a thing as psychological abuse, and it can be every bit as damaging as physical abuse. And in some ways more. It depends. Obviously, physical abuse can leave you dead or crippled, crippled is a good word for it. I think when someone beats you until you lose your ability to do something, that's what I call crippled. That disabled doesn't quite get it. You crippled me. You didn't disabled. Come on. I mean, sometimes people are disabled because of something, whatever. There's nothing wrong with that term. I'm just saying in that context of like someone doing something to someone else, I think crippled is a little more apt. It's like describing what someone did to someone else, as opposed to putting some sort of stigma on them for having something like their hands messed up because their parent crushed it or something when they were a little kid. It's like a crooked hand or something. So yeah, physical punishment, it has its own extreme. All right. But on a certain level, like extreme mental punishment is less obvious and can be also really bad and just as long lasting and have even more repercussions. Because in a sense, when someone breaks your arm or takes your foot or whatever, it's like, these are very extreme examples, but it's like if they leave you, you can still be somewhat mentally intact against that. But when someone over a long period of time manipulates and psychologically toys with you and you're a child and stuff, it can be very abusive. So there are also psychological blows that are delivered. And, as a parent, when I have disciplined my children, I've always made it a point that I do not ever bring physical discipline, like actual spanking, into something. Well, not actual physical discipline. Actually, I've always said I start when they're very small. Like when they're infants, I would physically restrain them so I could brush their teeth. Actually, their gums. Because I discovered with a third baby, if you don't brush their gums, their teeth can rot out from any sweets they eat. I mean, tooth decay can start under the gums because it's absorbed through the gums. It's very absorbent. And it can begin as they start emerging and stuff. You don't realize you need to brush it as they emerge, even though they don't like it. And so I had to restrain them. And to me, I realized after a while of restraining them, they would struggle. But I gently restrained them. But then they would relax and allow their teeth to be brushed. And then later on, they would get annoyed and angry, even if why aren't we brushing our teeth? Not that would be acceptable, but they would be a little bit perturbed or upset if when I wouldn't brush their teeth, because they submitted to it and now they expected it. Okay, but physical punishment generally I consider for my older kids who have some understanding. We're talking about kids who understand right from wrong. Somewhere after 5, whatever. Somewhere along the line. Around there, it starts coming into being, where they understand lying and things like that. Things that I have told you are wrong and you do them, you get a spanking. I tell you not to do something and you do it, you get a spanking. Now, I've had kids discover things that were wrong that I didn't warn them about. And so I only chastened them, quote unquote. Like I said, a spanking is still a chastisement, but I only chastened them verbally and not in an abusive way. So it is a gentle rebuke. Like we don't and the thing is, I was guilty of this same thing. I was guilty of once carving a musical instrument just because it was made of wood and I liked between the wood grains. I was a very curious kid. I liked to pick things apart and do things. And I just pushed on and I saw in between the lines, I could make them. And I carved these lines into my grandfather's guitar. I still have the guitar. But I never confessed to it either for many years to being the one. And then I had a child in my house that started basically through the same sort of idle curiosity, vandalizing a musical instrument around the house. And I never told anyone specifically not to do. No one ever told me either, right? And I thought of myself as a child, and I realized later I'd done wrong, but I remember at the time I'd done it so innocently. And so I thought, well, my child must have done this innocently. So I didn't fly off the handle, but I also did show the proper amount of, hey, we don't do this. I just spoke to him sternly like I don't usually do. Whenever I need attention, I speak to them sternly. And then they get my attention. And that's also a form of chastisement. That's you know what I mean? And so and the thing is, kids can become resentful of their parents telling them stuff. You have chastisement that comes to you. Like, hey, you know what? That's not how it's, like they indicate something, you have to contradict them, and they get sullen about it or something like that. One, don't put up with that. Well, and if you're having that problem, I don't know where to go from there. I haven't had a lot of problems with teenagers. Some, but I mean, I think it says, if you raise a child in the way that is right, they won't depart from it. If you start out good, it's easy as you get later. Also, like I said, I just think being in school makes it harder. Maybe especially for girls, who knows? I don't know. Harder. Or maybe I just have less experience with girls, And And I hate saying girls as an example because I only got one. I don't mind using boys because they're like, boys, no one will ever know which boy. You know what I mean? So I don't talk about my girl too much. But anyways, not that there's really any problems. Not any actual problems. See, the thing is, I have little difficulties that we iron out. You know what I mean? Like everyone does and should. But some people have genuine problems that result in fractured relationships. And I try to avoid that. I don't want that. Right? I think that that's part of what we, as parents, you strive. A lot of the problems people run into with their kids is I'm sorry, I'm trying to fix my mic as I'm talking into it, is they want their kids to like them. And God wants us to love him too, but he's not shy about chastening us. It's tempting as I remember in the ignorance of my youth being annoyed at the things my parents would say. Because they didn't really understand my current situation. But, as a parent now, I look back and I'm like, no, they didn't. And, and I don't understand my children's current situation sometimes. But I do vividly recall what it was like. So I do understand how they feel, but I also can tell them that your feelings are absolutely not in alignment with reality necessarily. Like how you feel about the situation is not what it really is. It's like you have this inkling because of what you in your limited experience have seen. And when God rebukes us in some way, I don't feel like I've been tempted to despise God's chasing, but I despised my parents' chasing as a teenager. I know that. I didn't like, even if because sometimes it was not like, it wasn't that it was like, oh, it stung. It was that it was like annoyingly out of touch. You know what I mean? And I didn't have it in me as a young man to be the big person and like try to make it, to open things up and to make things, I don't know. I just don't think my parents had the tools to deal with it. I think that modern society, who has the tools to deal with it? It's only been here for a brief time, a century or so. I mean, people are really, no wonder society is crumbling because whatever built what we're living in is now gone. And now it's just going on its own. And it's not clear that it can go on its own. You know what I mean? The society that built the current society is no longer here to sustain it. All right. But for whom the Lord loveth, he correcteth. And this I can attest is true. There's been times when I think about my kids and correcting them, there've been times when it's tempting to just blow it off. Why? Because one, it's difficult for me. I mean, as far as like, I don't like to tell people, I don't like to contradict people, even my children. I don't like to tell them things that they don't want to hear. I don't want to make them have negative emotion based on something I say. You know what I mean? A lot of times parents will call that make them not like me. I don't want them to not like me. No, what you mean is like you're going to disappoint them or cause them to feel disappointment about something by telling them no or something. Or by telling them no, you can't do that, or like saying, no, you won't speak like that, or, but instead you let things slide. And it goes back to Leviticus 19:17. Thou shalt not hate thy neighbor in thine heart, thou shalt rebuke thy neighbor. If you are supposed to rebuke your neighbor, how much more so your own child? If you don't rebuke your child, you hate your child. Whoso spareth the rod hates his son, is what it says. Now, and again, I take the rod as a metaphor for all correction. Just like this chastening is a metaphor for everything right up to the rod. Not that I've never used a rod. I always reserve the belt for the greatest things, because that's what I got. When I got caught stealing when I was 12 or maybe 11. I forgot if I was 11 or 12. I was 11 going on 12 or 12, whatever. I might have been just 12, just turned 12, 6th grade. New school, new friends. They led me, because I wasn't the type of kid to steal without some pretty good provocation, and I was pretty bad at it because I had a conscience. So I looked guilty as hell, and we got caught because I'm not a good thief. I'm a pretty bad liar. I'm not going to say I'm a terrible liar. It's like some things can be learned. I don't think I became a good liar, though. So at 12, I was pretty bad at lying, let me tell you. That's true. I would say that's true. As a kid, I was a terrible liar. I only grew up to learn to lie, and I'm ashamed of that. I would have rather stayed with my innocence, you know. That was like a gift. I was innocent. It's an interesting way to go through youth in such a corrupt world, I tell you. Not perfectly innocent, I mean in a certain sense, right? Gullibility. For whom the Lord loveth, he correcteth, even as a father the son in whom he delighteth. If you want your son to be the best he can be, you're going to make corrections. Now, you don't want to nitpick them to death. Don't grieve them. You know what I mean? You don't want to grieve them with your overbearing, nitpicking, trying to get every exact thing. Chastening should be reserved for things that are worth, everyone's got to have some leeway to be themselves. You know what I mean? Mostly it has to do with doing wrong and being acceptable. You have to let them be the acceptable person that they are. You know what I mean? I can't mold someone into someone they're not in a certain sense. You know what I mean? They're going to have their limitations. Everyone does. And their gifts. And I can't, like someone with someone else, I can't make my child have my gifts if they've got someone else's gifts and vice versa. So it is foolish to despise that chastisement. And it can be despised. I didn't look at the word despise, but let's just say it in the terms of let's not properly value it. To not understand that this is valuable. God's chastening. Thank you. It's a gift of love. You know what I mean? It's not just that you despise it. You know what I mean? Like counting the cross of Christ an unclean thing. You have to count the proper value of what it really is. When God chastens you, he regards you as his son. In Hebrews it talks about this. I believe it was in Hebrews, right? Same exact concept. It's a beautiful thing. And it's how you should regard the hardship of your life as a Christian, as a believer, as a true believer in the power of God, in the Lord Jesus Christ and his resurrection and his death and the forgiveness that was bought by it. I could go on about that. There's so much to say. It is good, like I said, I always reserve the belt for certain things. Rebuke without, because like I said, I told him we don't do this. Now, because I never told you not to do that, you're not going to be punished. I'm not even really angry with you. I'm more just angry it happened and angry I didn't tell you. All right, because I'm pissed. I'm mad that that now this is damaged and I let you do that. Okay. But now everyone's going to know, and especially. So if you ever do this again, it's the belt. You know what I mean? Right? I was like, we don't do right now. That would be disobedience. Because I just wanted to make it a rule. No, we don't carve out our nice piano. We don't do that. Right? It's fine. Kids are kids. They make mistakes. I made the same exact mistake. So it helped me have pity on and mercy and understand. You know what I mean? And I use that example. That's why sometimes it's good to talk about yourself, because you got some good reasons to do it. As an example. Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. Well, yeah, right. Happy you will be. Because through wisdom, you can have all the accoutrement of life that can make for a happy life. Not necessarily the wealth and opulence that people associate with their covetous desires, but I mean, for a truly fulfilling life, which is what I mean, because I think true happiness is not found in exhilarating pleasures or in whatever it is people often seek, but it is found in accomplishing things that are worthwhile and knowing that you've done something that makes a difference, at least to some degree. And that does make for you feel like your life was worth something, as opposed to just being just consumed for your own. I mean, like the idea of being just consumptive your whole life. I mean, I guess it's a perspective, right? I don't think that's wisdom, though. I think that's foolishness. The merchandise of what? Of wisdom is better than the merchandise of silver. When I was trying to do the stream and I had some audio issues, I was trying to bring up that part from the great whore in chapter 18 of the book of Revelation, where it says the merchandise of silver and of gold and of precious stones and of pearls and fine linen and ointment and all these things that the merchants of the earth That is the merchandise of Babylon of the end times, right? Of the great whore. Because it's all about that consumptive spirit. Of like, oh, more. I mean more stuff. Well, I need more of the stuff. Oh, bring me all the riches, all the goods, all the smells, all the tastes, all the touches, all the sights, all the sounds. And at the end, slaves and souls of men. And there are men in being enslaved. We have a slave army in Ukraine. That's what because the government is that's our proxy government. We overthrew them in 2014 and installed our government there. And then we led by a Nazi faction and had them start bombing the Donbass and persecuting the Russians out of their ethnic hatred and exploiting that to provoke a war. And now we have it. That's how I feel about it anyways. That's not from the word of the Lord. That's just by permission. My point is, we're continuing to, they can't make peace. They tried to, we wouldn't let them. You understand? We sent our ambassadors there to prevent peace and to continue the war. And that war continued, and it cost untold hundreds of thousands of lives on both sides. And now we want them to continue fighting, and they can't stop, even if they want to, because we're continuing the pressure. And as long as that fire hose of cash is open, why would they stop? Why would the leaders stop sending their young men to die, and now their older men, and all their men to die? What do they care if in the end they walk away with billions of dollars for themselves? Okay? You know, we have some really perverse incentives going on here over there, and this is what our government is doing. In our name, we have a slave army. They might as well be Mamluks fighting on our behalf. It's disgusting. All right, that's my opinion on that anyways. But, I got that out of merchandise of gold and silver. Anyways, but people covet these things. Merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones. Right? And oftentimes, people think, I remember hearing people talk, what are we going to do? What are we going to do if everything, starts coming apart? World War III, what are we going to do? If the dollar collapses, what are we going to, I guess we got to go get the gold we've been invested in. It's like, you really think if everything collapses, you're going to go to that gold account you bought, and then they're going to be like, oh, here's your gold? What do you think's going to be there? That's just a hedge against up and down. It assumes the system goes on. All right? Let me tell you what happens in the real end times. They take their gold and their silver and they throw it to the moles and the bats, and they try to pretend like they never had it. They try to get it as far from themselves as possible so they can go into the clefts of the rocks and to the tops of the ragged rocks and pray for the mountains to fall on them to hide themselves from Christ. That's why it's like, you better seek wisdom. Forget the ruby. People's like, well, we got gold hedge in the fund. We got, I tell you what, I've always said, against normal fluctuations in human problems, nothing wrong with, I've got some small plan against such things. I can't do much because I'm poor. I can't stockpile things for I can't do it. Can't do it. And so, for me, in a sense, as a poor man, and this is attested to, it's like, this is why it's so hard for the rich to enter the kingdom. I'm like, okay, well, I'll just stockpile righteousness and stuff because that's more readily at hand. Or wisdom. I'll get a stockpile of wisdom. I'll figure things out. I'll gain knowledge. Because the knowledge of the Lord is what, the wisdom that he gives us by the Holy Spirit is what will guide us through the end times. I don't need I don't need a cunning plan of Jesus isn't going to go on Judgment Day why didn't you have a proper pantry, and where was your solar generator, and blah, blah, blah. Why didn't you have more M16s? Why didn't you, It's like, what are you talking about? Our weapons are not carnal, but mighty through God. Did you not see what happened did you not see what happened with the loaves and the fishes? How is it you're not understanding? Didn't you see what happened when he was on the ship and it was tossed in the sea? How they were afraid they wouldn't make it. And it's like, okay, I'm just gonna I've lived my life through faith already, and so I'm well exercised for what's going to come. Or I'm trying to get well exercised. I'll tell you what, I do not feel prepared. No, sir. I don't think anyone is ready. You couldn't possibly be. For in those days shall be affliction, such as was not from the beginning of the creation, which God created unto this time, neither shall be. Oh, but that's not for us. No. I think it's hilarious that people think that, like, there's no, that, like, you don't think your, let me put it, our is it the word ease? Not quite. Our sort of sedentary ease and our comfort, our luxury. You don't think that all deserves a bit of a rebuke? You know, I recently, for the first time in 20 years, I installed a shower with hot water. We haven't had a hot water shower in 20 years. We have a bathtub with a hose, and you can hold the hose over your head, and that's the way we showered for the past 20 years, all 10 of us plus. But this summer, I finally constructed a shower with hot water. And I was sitting in it the other night and just thinking, I was so thankful for it and thanking the Lord. And I was just thinking, I'm like, you know, and if this is my last hot shower ever, I'm thankful if I never feel another one. Because it's like someday that could be the case. And so we're so used to these things. You know, the people over in Gaza, they don't have any hot showers right now. And when they do have hot showers, it's with salt water. You know? And it's like, I don't know. Anyways. The paths of wisdom are the paths of peace. Making peace. You know, there's a lot of people in Israel calling for peace. But there's a lot of people calling for blood. That's not a wise path. I'm not telling you. We're going through Proverbs right now. It's a funny time to go through it while Israel is bungling. I say if they do what they do, they're making a mistake. It's sin. What they mean to do with their rhetoric and stuff, the bloodbath that would be created through what they intend to do, they need to find some other way. I'm not saying, roll over, land for peace. I don't know. You know, how about pray about it, fast about it? Like I said, maybe we should do that study on Gibeah. I mentioned it a couple of times in Gibeah. Remember in Gibeah? These men of Benjamin in the town of Gibeah. There was a priest passing through with his concubine. They raped and murdered her. The priest chopped up her body and sent it to the 12 tribes and saying, look what has happened. They all were enraged by this atrocity that the Benjamites had done, their own kinsmen. And they all gathered up against them to go to war against them. And I think maybe not right away, but that they asked the Lord even, should we go to war? And he said, go ahead. He said, go ahead. And they went up, and the men of Benjamin smote them. The wicked men, the evil wicked men smote them. Twice that happened. And then they went before the Lord weeping and repenting of their sins. It's like you think you just that doesn't work that way in the Bible. You know what I mean? Like, Like I said, I've been thinking about it lately. Boy, you know, it's like if you do not abide by the ways of the Lord, the land will spew you out. That's what the scripture says. The land will spew you out. And that's a distinct danger. And I sure don't want to see that happen to those people, regardless of whether they whether they should have ever gone there in the first place. I mean, if you think about it, it's like if God has not set it up, it's almost destined to fail. And they never were able to deal with the Palestinians. And how are they going to deal with them? What, are they going to exterminate them now? Cast them out of their land? Like they're going to forget it? Expel them? That's called ethnic cleansing, by the way, I'm just saying the world today doesn't put up with that stuff. We'll say, well, the Jews are entitled to make a state. Are they? God scattered them among the heathen. That's what he did. That's the last I heard. He will bring them back, it said, but some of them say that, oh, no, this isn't it. That's astonishing. I don't know. But all I know is, like I said, I pray for all the people there. I pray for peace, most of all. I would be so pleased to see all of them live in peace there. Because that, length of days. You want to live long? You want to have riches and honor? Well, you got to live long and also living a certain way, in an honorable way. See, a lot of times I gotta say, there's a, like I said, there's the children of this world have a certain wisdom. Sometimes it seems wiser, like use cunning craftiness. There's sometimes, like you look at the craftiness of Jacob in the book of Genesis, and it's really borderline dangerous. I'm not condemning him or anything, but like like it says, he's sort of misleading, if not deceiving his father. He is taking advantage of his brother's hunger. There are all these things where he's taking advantage of imbalances of situations. And later on in his life, it causes him to fear for his life because of that. And I tell you what, the problem is in the Middle East, when the Jews came to the Palestine, they had an imbalance. They were wealthy Europeans coming there. They were buying up the land. There was, they were paying very high prices for land that was not really worth that much, but in the process dispossessed the people that lived there. And and of course the resentment and blah blah blah. And I don't deny that there's a lot of Semitism in that on the Islamic side or whatever, but that's not the point. There's a lot of hatred from all corners, and that's the problem. I don't see anything that was ever accomplished or that Jesus preached should be accomplished through hate. I mean, there is a place for hate. But I mean, like, for the actions like that, for acting out your hatred in such a way. I mean, like, you've got to, when you feel hatred, there's a way to process it, but by acting it out through murder and through killing that's so indiscriminate that it doesn't regard the lives of the innocent. It's like, well, killing the guilty is more important than regarding the innocent. Where does that wisdom come from? You know what I mean? They say, well, we do take care. You take more care, is what you mean, than the other people do. But it's like, when you do what you do, that like, yeah, innocent people are going to die. And we know that while we take some care, we can only do so much because we really want to get the bad guys. And that's the truth. And there's worse than that, but I don't blame anybody. Because on both sides, there's just barbarity. And people say there's not. No, there is. There is. It's not equal or whatever, there's like whatever. It's not about equality. It's about being equally wrong. Not equally wrong. You may be unequally wrong, but you're all on the wrong side of right. That's the point. I mean, everyone's on the wrong side of right. I don't care who's less wrong at this point. That's what I was saying. It's like, I'm not so bad, but I don't find that to be like being not, that's like a perfect example. I'm not so bad. Other people are much more sinful, but when they repent, it's more impressive. All right. There's more rejoicing in heaven. All right. So they have a harder road to go. So it's incumbent on me to be the bigger man in a certain sense. And yeah, I may take my lumps because of that. Well, at what price? Peace. Peace doesn't, you're going to lose lives either way. And it's quite clear that through war and revenge, the peace was never wrought except by absolute slaughter and destruction. And honestly, I can't imagine that working either, unless you think. I mean, who's ever killed all their enemies? Well, the enemy usually breaks, don't they? I guess the Romans did so to Carthage, didn't they? I think that's what they mean to do. And I don't know. I'll tell you what, whether you're successful or not, the Lord will not bless you in it. I promise that. It's a foolish path. Wisdom is a tree of life to them that lay hold on her. We should be in favor of life above all else. Not murder. Murder on every side. No good. Everyone, there's a right to defend, right? But they failed to defend themselves. That already happened. You had a right to defend yourself, and then you repelled the attackers. And now what? You're going to go after their families? The problem over there is they can't hide anywhere. Like the people are just packed in. Not entirely, whatever. I'm done with that. Blah. Oh, happy is everyone that retaineth her. You gotta hang on to it. And am I saying the things, as I'm saying this, I'm sort of blowing off like I don't want to talk about because I don't, but it's heavy on my mind, and it's hard not to. But wisdom teaches me, we've been reading this, and the very first thing it says, the blood of the innocent. Now, it's obviously the worst way is to do it like it says, up close and personal. expensive. It's not much better to do it, to say, oh, yes, we'll press the button and someone will die, but we don't know who, and, well, we hope we got the bad guy. I'm not such a fan of that line of thinking. I think there's other ways to solve problems, perhaps. Perhaps. I mean, like I said, it's like all you're losing, the only thing you're giving up really is pride. Because it's like, you can always go kill people again later. It's not like you can't undo death. But you can go back and go to war. You know what I mean? If you don't go to war and you try something else, you can always change your mind and say, screw it, we're going to kill people. But once you've killed people, you can't undo that. So I don't see why you wouldn't do everything else first, even after what they did, honestly. And no, I totally get the hot blood stuff. If it was my family, I'd be stomping the heads in of the people responsible. I'd want to, certainly viscerally. I 100% agree. I understand their feelings, you know what I mean? But as an outsider, I'd say you're too close to the situation to really see it with an even hand as someone who's watching this go on for decades and generations. It's like, I don't want to be taught. If the world continues, if this isn't coming into the end times, I don't want to be talking about this in 30 years. It's really got to come to an end because it's dangerous for everybody. Draw us into war. Maybe they ought to withdraw. Maybe ought to. I don't know. Yeah, you have the right to exist. You're a nation. Do you have the right to possess that land? Well, God took it away from you, to tell you the truth, so I don't know the answer to that question. Some rabbis say no. And so and there's a lot of people there who object, and they want your blood. I don't know what to tell you about that. They say it's theirs. They were there. And it's like, I know the whole history of it. It's like a lot of them probably immigrated there, and now they consider themselves, because they were Arabs, culturally Palestinian. Even though, like I said, Yasser Arafat was an Egyptian. It's kind of this strange tale. But maybe that's the Lord's way of whatever. I don't know. I don't want to say that by anything other than my own speculation. By knowledge, the depths are broken up. The Lord, by wisdom, hath founded the earth. By understanding, he has established the heavens. By knowledge, the depths are broken up. See how this exaltation of knowledge. We need to obtain the knowledge of God. He, through his knowledge. And also, it also sort of, lends into the thinking that I hear people talk about from time to time, how that the flourishing of knowledge in Western civilization may have very much to do with there being one, the Jews' religion did have a knowledge focus, and you saw that in the first century Jews, among whom was Jesus. They were among probably all the peoples of the world more well learned. Jesus could read. He read in the synagogues. And probably many of the disciples, they say they were illiterate, but that's not necessarily so. The Pharisees went about teaching. Some of them were illiterate, probably. Like, I doubt Matthew was. He was a tax collector. He would have had to have some sort of ability to account for things. And I'm sure he was able to. So, but then after the first century, with the Christianity now being, the Jews had a religion that was like, we are the Jews, we are the nation, we are the people of God. And this is the knowledge we have is for us, really. It's not that it doesn't apply to other people, but we don't have a prerogative or any sort of imperative to carry it to other people. God has not asked us to do it. He asked us to shine as sort of to be a blessing to other nations, but he hasn't spelled out how we should do that other than by being this holy nation. And so they were trying to do that. But now that same idea of being a holy nation, also committed to knowledge and committed to the knowledge of God, and who created with knowledge. That means there's the knowledge is out there of how these things were made, and also what they're made of, and also, all these other things. And so when Christians began to now spread to have a religion that was like, okay, we got to spread our religion, it led to the idea of a spreading of knowledge. I do think that this is not coincidental. The obsession with the knowledge of God, with secret knowledge, that things could be knowable, that the world was made with wisdom and understanding, not just out of chaos. Like there's a notion of chaos out of which came order, but it had to be ordered by word, by intellect, by a mind, and that it was God. And so, Knowledge and wisdom bring about the effects of nature. And that's true. It's not magic. It's knowledge. You know what I mean? It's sort of a mechanistic thing. It's not unknowable. It's not some mysterious thing. It's a knowable thing. That's what I'm saying. The Bible teaches that the ways of the creation are knowable. And that kind of insight, I would agree, and with the insight of some people in the academics who talk about these things, did lead to the flourishing that we know as the West. Now, people often cite the Dark Ages as some sort of Christian thing. The Byzantine Empire in the East was clicking along fine while the Dark Ages were consuming the West. The Dark Ages of the Western Roman Empire had more to do with the collapsing empire and the barbarian invasions and the debasing of the currency and all these things like we're doing now, than it had anything to do with the religion Christianity. If anything, Christianity helped eventually pull them out of the Dark Ages by provoking travel and communication and eventually the transfer of knowledge back to the West. And so it could flourish there again because when the books and learning came back, it's not that they were frowned upon. You understand? It's that the people, the reason there was a Dark Age in Europe is because basically Europe's all those barbarians got converted to Christianity just like all at once. And they were just a bunch of ignorant barbarians, and they didn't really know anything. It wasn't like the Greeks converting to Christianity. You know what I mean? They had this like significant, educated group of a population that would actually hear these ideas, like Mars Hill and stuff. They didn't go to Mars Hill. They went to some chieftain, and he'd convert, and then they'd make everybody get baptized. It's not like that brought on a Dark Age. It was bringing all those barbarians into history. And those kingdoms, the Christian kingdoms that came out of them, suddenly that became the Dark Ages because a bunch of ignorant Christians who were not very Christian were part of that history. And that's really a lot of what it's about, because a lot of, if you think about the behaviors, it's like it's not based on some sort of thoughtful conversion to the ways of Christ. That only really comes later in the Reformation. And that's why the Dark Ages were more about the barbarians who invaded the Roman Empire and became kind of part of that culture as Christianity infiltrated all those, because the Greeks and Romans had this desire to penetrate all. I mean, if you want to say that somehow the gospel being preached to the barbarians somehow debased the Roman Empire, I don't know. I guess that's somehow, I'd have to look at the history more closely. I haven't thought about the detailed, the detailed proceedings from about 4 to 8 AD in a while, which would be the period I'd be concerned about. Anyways, but let not them, well, it said by his wisdom, understanding, knowledge, the clouds. I guess sound wisdom and discretion. Just talking about all these things. They're all synonyms for similar things. Wisdom, discretion, the ability, like I said, the ability to have, like the idea that like there's depths to things, and to see the depth, and to be able to come up with deep ideas beyond just the simple, because things aren't always simple. There's a beauty in simplicity. There's a simplicity in Christ. That's the most beautiful thing, because you know why Christ came in simplicity and without any sort of, the mystery of Christ is very simple. Just he gives you faith as a gift. Isn't that beautiful? So that even someone who is has Down syndrome can receive this in simplicity without any sort of need to understand some deep, dark secrets. But there are also deep things for the wise, you know what I mean? And to be able to navigate and to help and to lead. But I always believe that, that's why I always despise things that pick at people's intelligence. I was tempted to do that when I used to argue with people. I was tempted to say, the way you respond causes me to question your intelligence. I wanted to say just major insults in my part, like just the way you write. I'm like, your grammar is so awful. You can't even talk English. Blah blah blah. Whatever. And I would get much crueler than that in my mind. I would write out really mean stuff and then delete it. Yes. And there's very little I regret actually over there. I do regret some, I suppose. Mostly if you wonder, what does Paul regret? It's like, other than anything doctrine that was corrected, that's corrected. But whenever I say anything rude or cruel to people, I do regret that. I try to avoid that. Even subtly rude or cruel. You know, even when I was like, I could go back and say, I would go back and say, here I was being maybe, I don't know, whatever. Here I was not right. That's all I mean. When you lie down, when you walk, you will walk in your way safely, and your foot will not stumble. Because by having wisdom, it teaches us to avoid stumbling blocks, things that we know are going to cause us problems, hopefully, whether it be by sin or, this is good general advice for life. You know what I mean? I've had a lot of experience with automobiles. Because of being poor, I've had to do a lot of my own work because at times I just didn't have the money. I didn't have the money. I could afford the part, but I couldn't afford the repair. So I'm like, well, let's see if I can do it myself. And hopefully, if it started off with things like, thankfully that were not too bad. So I've learned a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've lost a lot of vehicles due to my mistakes, but it's also given me foresight. Like I can see now my sons have their vehicles and I'm like, hey, I noticed something with your vehicle. I heard something or I saw the way the wheel was, I heard something with the wheel or, and then say, hey, I want to look at your brakes. Hey, let's check your oil. Hey, make sure you avoid trouble in the future. And, wisdom works that way with sin also. Though I don't try to avoid sin by wisdom so often. Wisdom is sort of usually different. It's more for, like I said, it's about depth. Wisdom can maybe help me understand sin and the wisdom teaches me that I should avoid sin, but I don't necessarily, but when I'm actually at the moment of avoiding sin, it's wisdom that's telling me to avoid it. But what actually makes me avoid it is something other than wisdom. That's righteousness. And hopefully, that because it's the righteous response. I mean, it's like wisdom tells you to do the righteous thing. The right thing, When you lie down, you will not be afraid. Yea, when you will lie down in thy deep sleep, and thy sleep shall be sweet. Sometimes you lay awake with worry and fear. I don't know if you ever have. I have. Because I don't have perfect wisdom, and I haven't always used it. I haven't always followed it. Even though I want to, I'll know it. I'm like, I should follow wisdom, but I'm doing this instead. It's almost, that is torment, I gotta say. The worst part is when you are in that phase where you are like, you're not debating whether to serve two masters, but you see yourself actively still serving two masters, even though you've committed to Christ. You're like, I'm going to serve Christ, not sin. But then you see yourself sin, and you're like, well, I'm serving sin. And you're like, yeah, but no, I'm not. I'm serving Christ. That's not a good place to be. You want to be out of that place. I said you want your sins to be accidental, if at all, right? I don't like to give room for sin, like I say, if at all. I know I don't say like, I know you're going to sin. I don't say that, no. I don't say you're going to sin. You're not going to sin. You're going to be right eventually, You're going to stand uprightly without sin. I know ultimately that is the truth. If you don't acknowledge that, then I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what gospel you've been listening to. Ultimately, we're all going to stand perfect before him, right? Through the blood of Christ, right? Putting all the sins of the past, all paid for by him, and no sins in the future, right? Right. So, we all know we got to get there. It's like, don't fault me for trying to get as far along as I can before I'm there. I just don't want to I don't like sudden shifts. You know what I mean? When I was young, I used to like roller coasters, where you have sudden shifts and changes, where maybe like you go off the edge and just zoom down real fast, right? I don't want to be like, go from being a man just suddenly, I'm just elevated to saint status suddenly. Wow. That could be rough. I'm sort of kidding, but it's sort of the logic on my part. It helps encourage me. I don't want to feel like I'm so much not myself anymore. I want to grow with him. That's what he called us to do. Be not afraid of sudden fear, neither the desolation of the wicked. When it will come. The wicked sometimes come and desolate, but you should not be afraid. Let the Lord be your confidence. He shall keep your foot from being taken. And I always take that in the ultimate. Because like I said, like I said, fear not them that kill your body, but afterwards there's nothing else they can do. But fear rather them that can destroy both body and soul in hell. Not them, but him. Fear him. I gotta admit, sometimes whatever. I understand the fear. I understand fear probably better than a lot of people. I try not to be fearful. But I understand. But I'll tell you what. I've learned through the chastening of the Lord. If you understand the chastening of the Lord is not just correcting when you do wrong, but also teaching you positively to do right. Okay? So let's go beyond chastening as, okay, it is a blow, like a correction. It is a blow, like a verbal rebuke. But it is also a blow like this. This is a burden you must carry. That's also a kind of blow. Like imagine if someone said to you, for the rest of your life, you're going to have to do this. It's like, whoa, you mean I must do this every day? In a sense, it is also something has been laid on you. And so another kind of correction a father must do is to tell his son, like I said, proactively. I said, I felt somewhat responsible because I should have said, you shouldn't do this. That's also the chastening of the Lord, to teach them the right way so that they would walk in it. And if we have that kind of chastening in us, if the Lord chastens us that way also, that way, and I feel that chastisement in me in that, through the experience of threats and fear, I've learned not to fear. I've learned to be like things that used to cause me fear. Now I scorn them. Things that used to make me anxious, I sneer. It just doesn't, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. That's not going to cause me worry or thought or fear. If you think about it, if we want to face up to the last temptation, to Satan himself in whatever form that takes, in the most personified form I think he will ever inhabit on earth, perhaps, because otherwise, how could it be said they worship the dragon? Well, we worship Christ, right? And he's not here. By proxy? Okay, maybe. I don't know if Satan is content to watch everyone worship him by proxy. Maybe that is his pleasure. He's content. But I don't know. It said, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. The Antichrist it's about himself. Jesus was about other people. Though he was proclaiming himself, he's like, the Son of Man must suffer many things. It's about him. But also what his mission was to save lives and not destroy them. The desolation will come, but we shall not fear it. The Lord has delivered us from previous things. He will deliver us from this. He will deliver us even from death. That's why, why should I lay in bed afraid? If I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Like the wonderful prayer the kids tell to terrify themselves, right? The Lord shall be our confidence. If we have wisdom and understanding, if we have obtained this from God, we should have confidence in God. Confidence relates to faith, right? We have confidence in him that he will save us. He will keep our foot from being taken. He will raise us from the dead. Nothing can harm us until God wills it. All right, we're going to pick up at verse 27 tomorrow. That's a good one because I wouldn't want to just, it's not a hard to understand verse, but I wouldn't want to just brush over it. So thanks for joining me today. I got to get going, so I don't want to run late at all. Until next time, thanks for joining me. And remember that the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy.
In Judah, God is known. His name is great in Israel. In Salem also is his tabernacle and his dwelling place in Zion. There break he the arrows of the bow, the shield and the sword in the battle. In Salem also is his tabernacle and his dwelling place in Zion. Thou art more glorious and excellent than the mountains of praise.